All right. I'm so excited to have you on the podcast and chat with you today, Stephanie. If you could just introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about you and your business and kind of what led you to this journey.
Oh goodness. All right. I'll be talking for a half hour on that one. Not really. I just am Italian and ADHD, so I get distracted. So my business, I founded a company called Grow Disrupt. So we design and produce 2 and 3 day grow your business conferences for ADHD entrepreneurs. So what does that mean? Because I always get like these funky looks like, wait. So we put on, a 2 day conference about how to grow your business. And we're going to have a speaker talking about how to market better. We're going to have a speaker talking about how to be a better leader, how to run smoother operations, be more profitable. Like, we're going to have speakers that are talking about all these elements of business. But the way the event is put together, from who the speakers are, the agenda, how it's pulled together, the speakers get trained on how to talk to a neurodivergent audience, how the room is laid out, the food that we serve, the drinks that we serve. We have custom music that we got created for playing during the breaks and during registration that helps people like move into specific brain modes. We have custom scents. Like, everything is literally built around how does the ADHD brain function, so we can help them not just stay focused at the event, but then actually retain the information so they can apply it later. And it is the most fun in the world because I just literally get to nerd out about neuroscience all day and then put on really cool events. So
I love that so much. And then I think that, it sounds really interesting. And I'm sure people walk away with like, oh, I didn't realize that this piece or that piece could actually help me to retain or help me, to be productive or whatever it is. I'm sure they're
it's
learning so much about themselves too.
It's so funny. So a lot of the stuff we do is really, really subtle. They don't always notice everything. And it will be really funny because and the reason for that is you've got, what works for one ADHD person doesn't necessarily work for another one. And so, this person needs fidgets. This person doesn't want to be distracted by that, right? So like, everything we do has to be done in a way that is not really going to be noticeable unless you're looking for it. And so what's actually happened is people don't necessarily notice. They don't know what's going on. And so they've started coming to me and going, what the heck's happening? What do you do? What's this magic what's this voodoo that you do in your rooms? And so now we're doing a lot. I'm talking about it a lot more. I get a lot more questions about, okay, so because it's something I realized I took everything I learned about how to set up our spaces for our events and I applied it in my home office, not even like thinking about it. And then I would talk to people and they'd be like, "Oh, your office is so pretty," and all of these. And I'm like, "Oh, yeah, I do all these things because they help me focus more." And that was when I realized, I was like, "Oh my gosh, I do all these things. Oh my gosh, I actually." So, yes, now I get asked a lot of questions about that. And it was not something I ever expected.
How funny. I love that. That's so cool.
Yeah.
Well, tell me a little bit. So that's what you're currently doing now. Let's go back.
Mhm.
I'd love to dive into your story a little bit more. And like, what were you doing before that? What has gotten you so excited about this work and led you into this path?
Okay, so we'll back up. We'll go. So I went to school, I went to college, university for equine business and facility management, which meant I was going to go run a horse barn.
Okay.
Um, yeah, so super applicable to what I'm doing today. Absolutely. Doesn't everyone who wants to go run a barn end up doing events instead? Um, so I graduated in good, I don't remember. I graduated, and basically the short version was I had too much in student loans to take a job in the horse field. Like, I couldn't make enough money to pay off my loans and actually be able to live. And this was back before they were really doing income-based repayment plans. So like, it was like, hey, you're going to be paying, this much per month. So sitting there, it was like, okay, so what do I do? What's my plan B? And I had taken a marketing class my junior year and I fell in love with it. I thought it was just the coolest thing ever. The nonprofit we did a project with in that class fell in love with me, and they hired me as their marketing director for my senior year, which was like weird and cool. I had no idea what I was doing. But I was like, okay, I know I like marketing. I'll go do marketing. And so I saw this ad in the newspaper that was like, do you like working with small business owners to design an effective marketing strategy on a budget? And I was like, yes. It was like, do you like it? It was basically talking to me. So I call them up,
Huh.
and I get a job, I thought, as a marketing consultant for the newspaper.
Mhm.
Um, Except like the second week in, I was doing so well. Like the first week I was there, I found someone who wanted to work with me as their marketing consultant. I was so excited. The second week I was there, I found someone who I'm ecstatic. The third week, they're like, wow, she's doing so great. They take me out of training, they put me in with everyone else. And that was the moment that I realized I was not a marketing consultant, I was a sales rep.
Mhm.
And I I mean, like I hit the panic button. I was like, I did not want to be a sales rep. I don't want to be in sales. Oh my God. Oh, I can't do this, right? And so hence, weeks of freaking out trying to figure out what to do. I just moved to a new city for this job. Like I had all this, I was like, oh.
Yeah.
And I finally decided, I was like, you know what? I was doing really well when I treated this like a marketing consultancy. That's what I'm going to do. So I ran for a year just running as a marketing consultant, and I was either the number one or number two sales rep every single week for our division, which was nuts. I moved around the company a few times, and then in 2014 into different roles. I ran the retention team for a while, and then as a digital specialist. And then in 2014, yeah, 2014, um, they were having a lot of issues. They started messing with my commission checks. Culture was getting super toxic. So actually, May 2014, I started a sales training practice because that was what I knew. I knew how to sell. Um, I knew how to sell my way at least. I had the opportunity. My mom was opening a sales training practice. She basically bought kind of a franchise, like a licensing thing, and the way her license worked, family members could operate under the. So I was like, great. So I opened a
Nice.
sales training practice too. Um, and that was May 2014. And by the end of August, I'd made more money part-time on evenings, weekends, and lunches as a sales trainer than I had full-time at my job. So I turned in my 2 weeks notice. I sayonara out of there. And I ran the sales training practice for that was really all I did. 2014, as I started coming up on the end of 2015, I started to realize it was not what I wanted to do for the rest of my life. So
Mhm.
I built it up really well. We were one of the largest practices in Central Texas. By then, it was doing really well. And so I was having conversations with these big name sales trainers, and they were walking me through, like, here's what it's going to look like when you're running a multi-million-dollar sales training practice. And I just remember looking and being like, I do not want that. Like, crap.
Yeah, that
I don't
is
know if I'm
not,
allowed to say that word.
of course. That is not, yeah, that is not what you envisioned.
No. And so I'm sitting there and I'm like, okay, well, I have this business. I have to figure out what to do. And I know I wanted to help small business owners. So I started coaching practice, and I built that up in 2016. And by, fall 2016, I was running, a multi six-figure coaching practice, and it was doing really well. And then I realized I did not want to be a coach either. Like I didn't have the patience for it. It wasn't what I really loved. It wasn't what I wanted to do to help small business. And I remember a friend, I think it was July or August. Um, and he looked at me and he comments, he goes, well, if you want to help small business owners, you don't want to be a sales trainer, you don't want to be a coach, you're putting on these sales training events, use the same skill set to put on events for small business owners. And I looked at him and I said, no. I was like, I've been to those events. I hate them.
Mhm.
They suck. They kill me. They drain me. I know we're supposed to go, but I do not like going to. And he goes, well, then put on the kind of event you want to go to, Steph. And I think that was him just like being exasperated with me shooting down all his ideas.
Yeah.
Um, but that was like, I was like, oh, okay, I could do this. So we planned for our first one in January, did our first multi-speaker business focused event in January 2017. Um, and it liked it, but I was like, I don't know that I'm ready to pull the trigger and like rebrand. Like, so we're gonna do this again in 2018. We're gonna have a whole year to plan the event and do it right. And so we did it again in 2018, and that was when I was like, okay, this is what I want to do. And so we rebranded the company. We launched Grow Disrupt in 2018. We started shutting down the sales training practice. We started shutting down the coaching practice so I could really focus on these events. And I just remember in January of 2020, um, being so like we got to the end of the month, and our flagship event is in January every year, right? So we get to the end of the month. We've just finished the Grow Retreat 2020. And I just remember feeling so proud because people were finally starting to get what I did. They weren't introducing me as a sales trainer anymore. They weren't introducing me as a coach anymore. They were like, oh, this is Stephanie. She does events. And I just remember sitting there and being like, oh, thank God, this is fantastic for about 6 weeks. And then March came around and I was like, oh my God.
Yeah.
Panic. And the skipping to the end, the short version there is we doubled in size in the pandemic somehow instead of everyone else in our industry shutting down, which we could talk more about how that happened, which led to a lot of questions, led to me ending up accidentally starting a marketing agency, which we also shut down after I realized I was getting sucked into running this marketing agency and I didn't want to do that. And so I wrote a book, released that on how to market, on small business budgets beyond social media, so everyone can do what we did without, without having to hire me to do it for them. And then here we are.
Amazing. I love that so much. And like throughout the journey, it's like, oh, this doesn't feel good anymore. Like this isn't fun anymore. Let's pivot. Like there's
Yeah.
so many pivots along the way just to create the business and the life that lights you
Yeah.
up, that gets you
Yes.
excited. So I think
Yeah.
that's so cool to really think about. Because I think a lot of people go down a path, feel like this is the path, and they're stuck on it forever, and they can't like make a U-turn or make a turn at the light. Like they're just like, I'm on this path and this is supposed to be what I do and I'm supposed to be
Or
happy.
or they don't do anything because they feel like once they pick a path, they have to stick with it.
Yes.
And I always, there's a fine line there, right? There's a fine line between giving up before you give something the chance.
Yeah.
And I didn't give up before. All of the things that I was running, they were built up and successful. And then I was like, okay, no, not what I want. And would we be a lot further along if I had known that I wanted to do events for ADHD entrepreneurs, back in 2014 when I started this? Absolutely. Would I have actually ever figured that out in 2014? No. So, yes, just there's gonna be pivots. Just they go for you. You're never stuck. You're never stuck. That's the nice thing about life.
Yes, for sure. And that like brings so much peace, just like hearing that and like, okay, you're right. Like, yes, you're like, you can always make a change. You can
Yeah.
always make a change for your life and make it better or make it what you want. So I think that's so important to hear that. Okay, what advice would you have for the person out there that is working the job and they are kind of like, okay, this isn't it. What do I do? Like, what are some of the first steps that you would advise someone to start taking to start working, living the life that they want or to start the business?
Mm. So there's a handful of directions we can go with this one. One of the first things that I will give as a piece of advice I was given a long time ago that I did not fully understand. And the more I've heard it and kind of I've learned more about this, and the advice was that when you get to where you're going, you're only going to be more if you already are. And the way it was explained to me originally was when you are running a successful business, when you are wealthy, when you have your $1 billion valuation, if you cannot take vacations, evenings, weekends, and relaxation time now, you're not going to take it then. You will be the person working on the yacht while your family is playing around you. When
Mhm.
you get to where you're going, you will only be more if you already are. So, one of the things that I would really encourage is, and I think this was one of the really pivotal pieces for me, was about a year before I started building the business, I realized I wasn't really a finisher. I had all kinds of projects that were half-assed. Sorry. That were just like, that just popped out. That were just, I would get it going. And I understand now that that was the ADHD coming into play, but it really was bothering me that I had like no finished projects, no finished paintings, nothing. And so I said, you know what? I'm going to become a finisher. I'm going to start finishing stuff. I don't have to finish everything, but I can't not finish everything either. And
Yeah.
so what I would encourage starting the person who wants to build this up, look at the pieces of your life that you aren't necessarily thrilled with or happy with, or the pieces that you want to develop and start developing them now. If you know you want to be an entrepreneur, I will tell you now, you need really great financial management, you need really great marketing, and you need to be a great leader. So start developing those skill sets now. Now, on the practical side, which I think is probably more of what you were asking about, I would encourage to find a business a model that makes sense and really truly sink yourself into it. I told myself when I started the business, I had 3 years to build this business. And if I could not start taking my evenings and weekends back by the end of 3 years, then I would shut it down. I would go get a job. I actually promised my, at the time, boyfriend that, now husband, because when I started the business, I went to him and I said, hey, so heads up, I'm starting a business. If you can't handle the fact that I'm going to be, this is what it's going to look like for me. If that doesn't work for you, now's the time to leave because I'm not going to like, I was probably a real jerk to him. Unfortunately, he didn't. He stuck around. But I did tell him at the end of 3 years, if I can't get my evenings back, if I can't get my weekends back, if we can't start having a life, I will
Mhm.
shut it down. I'll go get a job and I'll work a job. So I would encourage you to pick up business, find a business model that works, and it doesn't have to be the perfect one.
Mhm.
In fact, I don't know hardly anyone who has gotten their very first business to take off to the point where that, like, I'm definitely the exception, not the rule of someone having their first business take off to the point where it could support them full time. Um, find a business you really kind of like and just start actually working it and run it like a business and know that you can change directions. What you shouldn't do is change directions before you give it a really solid shake.
Mhm. I
That
love
would
that.
be my two sides of advice, I guess.
Yeah, I love that so much. And I can relate in so many ways because I do the same thing where I get really excited about a lot of things and I start a lot of things. And then I'm like, okay, I need to hone it in and I need to be consistent. And yes,
Yep.
such great advice. And I still have to remind myself of that all the time because yeah,
I
I
mean,
just get so excited. There's like, oh, this is fun. Let's try this, you know?
oh my gosh, I was there's a joke among like the ADHD community that we need like a like those old chat boards of just like I got really into this hobby and I bought all the supplies to do pottery and I'm not doing it anymore. Does anyone want them? Because like we all do that. I have all of these like these where I've like spent hundreds of dollars buying all the supplies to do a hobby. And then like once I get decent at it, I'm like, okay, the novelty's gone. I don't want to do this anymore.
Yeah, that was fun for a minute. Yeah. So
For a
moving on.
minute, yeah.
Now,
And so I've worked very hard to like pick and choose. And what I have told myself is like it's okay to try something and decide I don't like it.
yes.
Um, what it's not okay is for me to try something, decide that it's too hard and shy away from that. I'm not going to do that.
Yeah.
If I do something and like I got into weaving, like weaving for a while, and I had a lot of fun with it while it was new and novel, and then it, like started to, and I wasn't enjoying it as much, and I realized I wasn't enjoying it because it's slow, it's boring to me. I wasn't stimulating, and so that was my permission to, okay, I don't care how much money I just spent on this. It's okay to drop that. You
Yeah.
don't have to finish everything, but you also can't not finish anything.
Right. Yeah. That's great advice. Um, so when did you realize that you were ADHD? Like, were you diagnosed at a young age or were you diagnosed or not diagnosed, or what does that look like?
So I got my diagnosis like it was 25 or 26. It was somewhere in there. Um, I was actually there was a networking event a group that I was part of, and one of the members of the group runs a company that literally does these diagnoses. Like that is their company. They do these diagnoses for kids and then help the kids and their parents advocate for accommodations at school. And I was just sitting down with her chatting at one point in time, and I just joked. I was like, I should probably have you tested. I've always thought maybe I'm a little ADHD or ADD. And she just starts laughing. She goes, I don't even need to do a test, Steph. Like, she's like, I watch you. You are so ADD. It's not even funny. Um, and so that was like 25, 26. And I like it was kind of like a funny, like, oh, okay, yay, hooray. Um, and then I didn't really do anything with it because I was already 25, 26. I was already running a successful business at the time. I had graduated summa cum laude from, a university. I had held down a job. I figured out how to work with myself. So it was kind of like, okay, yay. What's the, who cares? It wasn't till mid 30s. It was actually in 2021 after we had our massive double in size growth in 2020. And I was sitting down in 2021 as I was starting to get my head back on straight and just going, where did this come from? What happened? how did we put on an event where people are terrified to leave their homes and they're still willing to not just show up at our events, but pay me thousands of dollars to do so? What did we do? How did this work? So I just remember I had an entire list of all the things, and I was listing everything we do intentionally at our events, that like the stupid little things that I knew we did, and I knew we did them because I liked them, but I didn't like, I was just trying to find what the heck's the common denominator. And so I literally had a sheet of paper on my desk that I was just adding things to. Every time I thought of something, I'd add it to it. And it was just one afternoon, and I was kind of drifting off, and I was a little bit tired, and I just remember I had my phone and I was scrolling on like TikTok, and I just ended up spiraling down like ADHD talk and watching all these videos, and people would be like, "Oh, I never knew that I did this because of the ADHD." And I was like, "You do that? I do that. Do I do that because of the ADHD? Wait a second." Okay. So then I go to the next video, and this person's like, "Oh, I never knew I did this because of the ADHD." I'm like, I do that. What the heck? And what was like, there was this moment of like 4 or 5 of these videos in a row of me going, oh my God, I do all these things because of the ADHD. And then like, I just remember my eye got pulled over. And then it was like this, like, oh, like double take moment of like, oh, everything on this list is because of my freaking ADHD.
Wow.
And it was like this huge, I've been building accommodations for myself unknowingly my entire life. Okay, so let's do it intentionally. And so
Yeah.
that was when we leaned in on this. All right, yeah. So actually, our events are built for people with ADHD, and the response was just massive. So I don't remember what
That
the
is
original
so
question was.
cool. Oh my gosh. No, that was so cool. I just got chills because I'm like, that is amazing. Um, so I think that I am ADHD or ADD, and I haven't been diagnosed, but I'm like, I'm similar. I'm like, I've been like coping and figuring things out along the way, but I think
Yep.
sometimes it can make you like an even more creative entrepreneur because you are able to do all of the things, right? So I'm
Yeah.
like, whatever, it's fine.
It is. Well, and so here's the thing, right? One of the things that I really do love at our events is I will get people who come to me all the time and are like, thank you. I feel like I'm home. Or I'll get people who come up and be like, I never knew this mattered to me at an event. I never knew that it mattered that we, only have 5 chairs at every table. But holy crap, does that matter to me? And yes, so ADHD individuals do tend to think a little bit more outside of the box, less linearly. We do tend to be more creative, which does really lend itself. This is why we do have such a huge percentage of entrepreneurs are ADHD.
Yeah.
So I would encourage, I never want to tell anyone, don't, no, you don't have to self-diagnose, although it's challenging to get a diagnosis for a variety of reasons. But if you think you do, spend some time getting, like, do some research, start looking into it. And if things are starting to click, like, you're like, oh, I, oh, you very well may. And it can be a huge asset. It really can.
Yeah.
As long as it's managed, right? Anything good in excess is a bad thing.
Yeah.
And so there's all these pieces about being ADHD that are phenomenal. Our creativity, our outside the box thinking, our ability to hyper focus and get things done at a rate and a pace that most people can't. But any of these things in excess is a bad thing.
Yeah. Yeah, so true. And I think it's cool also that you're creating such a cool community where you can, they feel
Yeah,
like, okay, I'm not alone, right? Because I think that sometimes
right.
whenever you have something going on, you think like you're the only one that's struggling with this thing, right?
Yeah, we have one of the event we're doing in May, the ADH Disrupt event, May 24th. It's one of our taglines for it is "You're not weird," like, because we've consistently heard that from people. They're like, "I thought I was just weird." I'm like,
Yeah.
"Yeah, I did too." But you're not actually. There's a whole bunch of us doing the exact same thing. And every single one of us is telling ourselves that, like, oh, everyone else is just better at life than I am because they don't
Right.
have to do these things to remind themselves to get things done. They don't have to, they don't have to set alarms to make sure they show up on time to meetings. Like
Yes.
that all of these little things. And so almost universally, I'll talk to people who in their heads have been telling me, just kind of have this idea of like, oh, everyone else is just better at being an adult than I am. And that's not true. Um, we're dealing with a whole variety of neuroscience situations going on. Like there's a lot going on in the neurology of the brain for an ADHD individual, we're doing the best we can. And usually we're doing a pretty darn good job, especially in light of what we're dealing with.
Yeah. Oh, that's so good. And I think that even if you don't have ADD or ADHD, like everyone is uniquely weird. Like
Yeah.
everyone has their thing. Like there's no such thing as normal. Like everyone's dealing with something, you know what I mean? So it's
Yeah.
like just
Yeah.
embracing who you are as a person and then just showing up as that is
Yep.
so freeing, you know?
Yes. Yes, it is. When we stop, so like as long as I was pushing back on myself on all these things that I thought I was doing wrong, that's a lot of energy that I was spending telling myself that I wasn't good enough, I wasn't X enough, I was, whatever. Like that's a lot of and thinking in terms of like the actual glucose energy expenditures in your brain. You only have so much of that per day. Why waste it beating myself up, right? Like I've gotten so much more done. I'm so much happier since I've learned and I'm not going to pretend I'm perfect, but since I've learned to stop beating myself up most of the time.
Yeah, absolutely. It's always a work in progress, you know, whatever we've got going on, it's always a work in progress. So as long as you're
Yes,
trying and trying your best, I think that's all that you can do. So
100%.
amazing. Okay, well, where can everyone connect with you and work with you and find out where all of your events are being hosted and all of the things?
Yeah, so I tend to spend most of my time on LinkedIn because I don't know when that happened, but somewhere along the way I started like spending most of my time on LinkedIn. So anyone who's on LinkedIn wants to look me up. I hang out there. I do quite a bit of posting, have fun over there. If you do look up Stephanie Scheller, I've got a violin in my photo profile picture, so it's fairly easy to find me. You can also check out the company website. So that's growdisrupt.com, the name of the company. And we have all of our events listed on there, what's coming up, what's over, you can get on the mailing list. If for some reason someone wants to connect with me directly and learn about me, they can probably go to my website, and that's thestephaniescheller.com, like the one and only.
Yes. Well, thank you so much. This has been such a fun conversation.
This has been a blast. I appreciate it. Thank you for having me on.
You're welcome.